Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Platinum Guide. Wait a minute, that's wrong. Scratch that title, Platinum Review. Welcome back to another episode of the Platinum Review. I'm your host, Zach Zalego. You guys know what this show's about. I 100% a game, then I sit here and we have a nice discussion about it. Today, on the chopping block, is going to be Orcs Must Die. The first one. So this game came out a long time ago. I played it a little while ago, and today I felt like going back and 100%ing it. This game has 24 levels that you have to do twice, unfortunately. So you have one in the War Mage difficulty, and then you have to go back through the 24 levels in Nightmare difficulty. It has 27 achievements, and I did not do this one without some Googling. So I think that is good to get off the table right now. I will actually have up on screen right now a link to some the channels that I watched, TGN, MF Pallytime, and Chromar. I also watched a guy named Clockworks. They had great guides on every level in the game, so if you ever get stuck on one, I absolutely recommend watching these. They also have some really good trap setups. Clockworks has this one with a swinging mace. I used it quite a bit, and he actually uses it a lot in his videos too. So if you ever get stuck, and Nightmare will get you stuck, because there are some very challenging levels in this game. But this one's a throwback, and I hope you guys enjoy. Let's segue this right into the gameplay. Alright, so gameplay. This game's pretty self-explanatory, right? The game's called Orcs Must Die. Orcs are supposed to be dying, so you're the War Mage out here slinging your crossbow bolts, your fireballs, your ice amulets, and everything like that. So there's 24 levels in the game, as I already said. Your job is I think you're the War Mage. There's a wizard that guides you, and the game has some pretty good audio, actually. It has some pretty funny clips of the War Mage and the antagonist, the villain, the sorceress that's sending the orcs. They kind of talk to each other sometimes in the beginning of the levels, and there's some pretty funny interactions between the two, I would say. So in every level, you open up your spell book, and you have 9 slots by the end of the game to choose between traps and weapons. So you get to choose your weapons. So you don't have to take the fireball, you don't have to take the ice amulet. In this clip that you're seeing right now, I actually have the crossbow, the ice amulet, and I have 2 traps. You don't always need all 9, but it's kind of nice to have some trap variety and such. You might need a lot of traps sometimes to perfect certain setups. But what this game does really well is the gameplay, actually. It's really good. Keeps you hooked for the 24 levels. Every level you get something new to play with. And then in your second playthrough of Nightmare difficulty, you get to keep the stuff from your War Mage playthrough. So that's kind of cool that you actually start off really overpowered, really strong. The deficit in the early levels is that it's money. You don't have as much money, so you don't get to play with the more expensive traps, but you can actually still use the high-end endgame traps. And all your traps that you upgrade as you progress through the game, you get skulls per level, and those skulls you use to upgrade your traps. So, you know, you have your Paladin champions. Now your Paladins are a little bit cheaper. Instead of 1,200, it's 1,000, which actually makes a really big difference because you can get some traps out earlier than you would. And, you know, in the long term, you'll have more money to buy more traps overall. So this game actually has pretty decent enemy variety besides the traps and the map count. The enemies, you have your basic orcs, your crossbow orcs, you have your ogres, and then there's some spin-offs on the ogres. You have your sappers, which are your kobold runners, but with TNT. So you have your basic enemy set, and then you just have some spin-offs of the enemies. The difference, probably the biggest difference between your War Mage and your Nightmare playthrough will actually be that the Orcs then gain shields. So in your War Mage playthrough, the Orcs don't have shields, so they're just one-tap headshots. But if you actually go in your Nightmare playthrough, every Orc that is basic has a shield, which means now it actually takes 2 headshots, or, I'm sorry, rather a shot, and then it takes a second headshot. If in terms of traps, it means that the trap now has to hit it to knock its shield off, and then you actually have to hit it again to kill the orc. So that kind of stinks, but you can actually use those car traps, and one trap called a swinging mace. It's insane. This thing I'm telling you, the setups you can do with the swinging mace, doesn't matter if they have a shield or not, it kills everything. The only thing that I've ever seen really make it through swinging mace traps are ogres, but even the ogres are die pretty quickly. Other than that, this game actually has some really challenging levels. The finale, which is the final level, it's very difficult. It's about 13 waves, and you're trying to juggle like 6 or 7 doors. I'm sorry, it's like eight doors. It's 2 on like north, south, west, east. It's a very challenging map. Nightmare is hard. You can actually do a lot as your war mage too, without any traps. You can hold off waves, and that's what you're gonna have to do. So it's not always trap setups. Is basically what I'm trying to say here. And last but not least, one of the other mechanics that I haven't really touched on is the weavers. So the weavers are these 2 skill trees that you can kind of use in game. You spend your points in each round, in each level, I should say, to get upgrades. So there's 2 weavers originally, and then you unlock a 3rd later. So the 2 that you start with are the steel and the elemental. The steel weaver kind of upgrades your traps, makes them reset faster, swing more often. You get more money per trap. And then the other side of the steel weaver is your human trap setups, like your paladins and your archers. So your paladins get healed, and your archers can shoot fire arrows, which I actually think you'll use quite a bit in this because I did as well. Your archers can be extremely helpful. The other tree, the elemental, that kind of upgrades your war mage as a character. So, you know, maybe your flame bracers do more damage, your damage over time lasts 50% longer, the ice effect maybe lasts 33% longer duration. That kind of stuff. You can get a flame crossbow if you get that unlocked and stuff. And then the knowledge weaver, the last one that you get later in the game, which is not a very popular one. I don't think the knowledge weaver is very strong. But the knowledge weaver gives you some sort of balance between killing orcs and upgrading yourself and traps. So like you can get the rift will shoot lightning. You can resurrect dead orcs. But you don't really make any more money. It's kind of just like a general upgrade tree, and it doesn't hone in on anything so specific as to make it more valuable to you in a level. I think the steel one is the one you're going to use a lot more often, and the steel one is the one that I used in every level. The elemental's kind of nice if you're playing around, and the knowledge one might be fun if you just want to check it out, but the steel one actually makes the difference usually. After this, let's talk about the achievements. Are there any really bad ones? Not really. All the achievements are decently easy to get, except I would say the hardest one is probably going to be going to Act 1, 2, and 3 of Nightmare difficulty, because they're actually pretty difficult. Nightmare difficulty, you know, like I said, all the orcs have shields. Everybody gets like a 20% buff to their health, but you don't get any stronger. You don't get any extra money. You're still working against the same waves though, so if you play it in War Mage and you can beat it in War Mage, then a similar setup is viable in Nightmare as well. The difference in Nightmare is, or rather another difference in Nightmare, because it does ramp up the difficulty so much, is that there's no preparing phase in Nightmare anymore. So in War Mage, you'll get, like, every so many rounds, you'll get Unleash the Horde, and you have to press a button, which on most defaults it's G. But in Nightmare, there is no Release the Horde. You start the map, and you open, the game starts, rather, with you in your spellbook open, and you have to choose all your spells and your weapons that you want right off the bat, and then as soon as you exit out of your spellbook, the game begins in 3 seconds, which means that the orcs will be blasting through the doors that they're going to be coming through in maybe 4 to 5 seconds. You only have about 5 seconds on most maps to actually start working on setting up your traps, otherwise you're already behind kind of the 8 ball, so to say, because now they're pushing towards you. And you're actually going to have to sit there and do it manually while placing traps. And then in between waves, sometimes in War Mage difficulty, you get about 12 to 15 second wave intervals. In this one, no. You get 3 seconds. That's, you know, that's quite the difference when you're trying already difficult thing. I would say that's actually your biggest opponent, is just setup time. You have no setup time in Nightmare mode. So that's why I think that's going to be your hardest achievement. Total, though, all time, it took me about 20 hours, and that was with previous playtime. I had played this game a long time ago, so I kind of just picked up where I left off back then, finished my War Mage difficulty, and then went back and did a entire playthrough on Nightmare. But for the most part, I'd say that this one's easy breezy. Cover girl, baby. You know what I'm saying? This one should be an easy platinum to add to your collection. Another noteworthy achievement is the 40 kill streak. You can actually do this one and Balls of Fire together. I recommend it actually on the map Choke Point. You can do the setup that I had with the barricades and the 3 tar traps, and then you let all the enemies build up. And then you just rain fireballs on them. I do actually have a clip of that. I'll play it in the background now. So you can do those 2 achievements in the same one. Another one that you can do together is the no trap one, where you aren't allowed to use any traps, and the one where you're only allowed to use one type of trap. So the way around this is actually, and I'll have a clip of it in-game now, but the way around not using any traps, and I use this in air quotations, because the word trap means that it is anything that you're laying on the ground, not archers or paladins. So you actually can use archers and paladins instead of traps, and you can do those 2 achievements together as well. Another achievement that I had a little bit of difficulty with was the Skin of Your Teeth, where you have to survive with 1 rift point remaining. That one's a little bit difficult because you're controlling the flow of orcs manually. So what I actually recommend for that one is if you go into an earlier level, like the beginning levels, where you're only dealing with basic orcs, not crossbowmen because they're kind of annoying, and you do a head count every wave of orcs that comes towards you, and then you manually let it go down to 1, and then you control the flow and beat the level. I had a little bit of difficulty with that one, actually failed a couple times, because sometimes one too many orcs would come through, and then I would be overwhelmed because I'm already trying to hold them off at the rift. So if you try to control them a little bit earlier in the level, or you can do a head count as you go kind of thing, then I think that'll save you on the back end with the 1 point remaining. Another one that I just had a little bit of confusion on is In Your Face, where you have to get 100 acid pot kills. So I originally thought that that meant the DLC weapon that you can throw acid pots out with and then manually make them explode for mana and stuff like that. It's actually not that. There are acid pots in the level, so if you go to level 2, which would be the corner, there are 2 acid pots. So for my strategy for this achievement was put a barricade down and then have them go around the barricade underneath the acid pots, put tar traps under the acid, and then you just try to let them build up as much as you can and shoot the acid pots. The nice thing is that those things reload actually incredibly fast, so if you just wind belt them back one time, usually the pots are ready to go by the time that those orcs come back to that pot again. But that's all my tips. My general impression of the game, it was, let's say, an 8 out of 10 for a platinum review here. Not bad, not too hard. I think that most people could do it. Nightmare difficulty will pose a little bit of a challenge. I think it was a little daunting whenever I realized that I was going to do it myself, especially since I was still trying to finish up my War Mage playthrough, and I was like, oh, War Mage, this is like hard enough for some of these maps. You know, Finale being extremely difficult, especially in the Nightmare mode where you only have 3 seconds to set up. If you watch Clockworks' video on Finale, he does this very elegant guide where he sets up a lot of barricades, funnels every wave into a choke point until you hit round 7, where you can actually sit down and put a real trap setup around the rift, because you'll have so much money in Finale. It's just the first 6 waves are very difficult. I actually had to sit there and I took notes on it so that I knew what was coming every wave. And if you watch Pally Time from TGN or Clockworks do it, they'll both say that they actually memorize the waves of how many orcs come from each doors, and you'll even keep track of the ogres, because that map gets very hectic very quick until you get to round 7, where you actually have a trap set up down, and sappers are a continual issue until round 7 as well, where they will actually just come over and kill you But if you want to give it a shot, this has been my review. Thanks for watching, guys.